breaking news, mortgage rates plummet in North Carolina to 2-year lows as the Federal Reserve is talking about rate cuts for the first time in 4 years. And we're going to break down everything. We're going to talk about why this is happening, the impact, how you can avoid disaster, and most importantly, take advantage of this at least once in a 2-year opportunity that so many people have been waiting for. So before we even get into it, here's the headline from Reuters. There's a few mortgage market basics that you need to understand to have context for all this. One of those, again, is that we are seeing right here 6.15% is the lowest point we've been at since end of summer, early fall of 2022. And when we're looking at rates, everybody's talking about the rate, but what nobody is talking about is mortgage rates and what actually affects them, because the prime rate that the Federal Reserve sets is not what really affects them. The number one most correlating number is going to be the 10-year Treasury note. And you can see that also here, as we're seeing that we're back at the similar levels to that same time period back in the late summer, early fall of 2022, which was the last time we were here. Now, one of the biggest things that nobody talks about, because everybody talks about the rate and what the Fed's doing with rates, is the Fed's balance sheet. So to give you, again, just like the really, really high level, because we're going to get into the goodies here in just a second of what the impact of this really means and how you can take advantage of it, is that the Fed holds assets on their balance sheet. Here is in millions of dollars, so their assets here, $3.7 trillion versus today it's sitting closer, just north of $7 trillion. What's really important to see here is they are holding a ton of assets on their balance sheet. They want to get rid of those, and when they do get rid of them, they flood the market, drive down the interest rate on those markets, and so as a result, then you see markets start to fall when you're looking at mortgage rates and also Treasury yields. And so the important part that I want to cover here are the factors that caused this recent drop in mortgage rates, and more importantly, how it's going to impact the housing market in the near and long term. So as they've started to reduce their balance sheet here, it has started to flood the market and drive down the cost of money, which then lenders lend out to everyday folks like us. And as the Fed has foreshadowed today, actually, and this is why this is breaking news today, that they are going to be, potentially, it's not official yet, but doing at least a 25 basis point or a 0.25% rate cut, maybe as large as a 50. We will see later today. The market has already started to price this in, and so that's one of the reasons why, going back to that graph, that you've started to see in recent days and weeks a sharp decline from up by 7% down to just above or right at 6%. Now, I'll come back to that here in just a second, but what are the effects of these lower interest rates on home prices, and more importantly, inventory in North Carolina specifically, and what that's gonna look like over the next few months. Now, as we get into North Carolina specifically, you need to understand how North Carolina fits as one puzzle piece into the greater national market. We'll get into the national trends here in just a second. But for North Carolina specifically, we are very strong in relocation. We're very strong in the job sector. We're also very strong in income. And when you're thinking about what's going to affect asset prices when you're looking at homes and what you actually pay for a home, how many people are trying to buy it? How many are able to buy it? And then actually how much money do they have to buy it? So those are those three things. So looking at relocation, in Charlotte alone, we have 117 people per day relocating here. So there's a ton of demand for housing. Across the entire state, I think it's close to 30,000 people per month that move to the state and call this place home every single month. So relocation, there's a huge influx of new people coming in, but also for the jobs market, we have significantly lower unemployment than the rest of the country, currently sitting at about 3.6% as opposed to 4.2% nationally. So it's a significantly lower unemployment rate, so there's very strong employment. which then leads to the next question. Well, are these jobs actually paying well? And the answer is yes. So if we look at the past year of the national numbers, you can see here that currently the national household median income is slightly below where it was in 2019, which is crazy. But when we're looking at specifically 2023 versus the previous year, nationally it was up 3.9%. And when we look at the numbers for North Carolina specifically, those median household income, even though it's a little bit lower than the national number, it increased by 5.4%. That's right, 5.4%. So our income growth has been significantly higher here. So how does this actually impact the mortgage trends or mortgage rate trends, both locally and nationally? And how does that affect the broader market? And what does it mean for you trying to actually buy a home locally here in North Carolina? So many areas across the country are completely in the toilet right now. You look at Florida, their market is absolutely in the garbage can. It is garbage. There's many other markets that have seen large, steady declines. If you've seen, the headlines of people losing hundreds of thousands of dollars on short-term home price swings in places like San Francisco. But meanwhile, Charlotte has been absolutely cranking, again, primarily because of all the relocation here. And Raleigh and other major areas in Charlotte have seen similar numbers. So to put numbers to it, I want you to see here that this is the number of closed sales. So when you're looking at inventory and the constriction of inventory in North Carolina, again, supply-demand curve, right? More supply equals lower prices. More demand equals higher prices. In North Carolina, we've had very limited supply relative to the demand because as prices and especially as interest rates went up, more people decided to just stay put. And so for all these new people here, we're having to rely pretty much exclusively on new construction, and people aren't moving between houses nearly as much. And as a result, you can see here just over 60,000 units were sold last month in the entirety of the MLS for the Charlotte metro region, which includes Asheville, Charlotte, up close to Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and down about as far south as Lancaster, which is the lowest rate of sales that we have seen since early summer, late spring 2016. So it's been over about 4.5 years since we've seen this constriction of supply, which when you view this relative to the population growth that we've seen, this is the lowest number of homes sold per capita in this region in over a decade. It's absolutely insane. And so that's one of the reasons why we've seen, even though the interest rates continue to hike up until the last few weeks, we have seen the median price hold very, very steadily, as you can see here, with only a very, very minor decline last summer, and then once again began to continue to rise up. So today, how can you use this drop in mortgage rates to get a better home and save money? And there's a few things that we really need to unpack to give you the best answer, because there's not a single answer. There's the best answer for you. And I want to give you all the tools to figure out the best answer for you. And there's actually one even bigger question that you ought to be asking that we'll get into here in just a second. But before that, obviously lower rate is going to equal a lower payment. And as we're looking at the home sales for new construction builders in the third quarter, we want to look at their sales volume. You can see Q3, which would be July, August, September. We're going to see July 11,361 and August 11,185. So it has dropped pretty significantly here relative to these recent months. It's a very sharp decline, which is normal to see a little bit of that going with seasonality, but you can see that's a pretty big change relative to some of these other months that we haven't really seen since rates started hiking very aggressively through 21 and 22. And so it's expected that anytime you have an election year, this is just common knowledge within at least the professionals in the real estate industry, the last 60 to 90 days before an election, you see a huge decrease in the volume of sales. And so as a result, builders always kind of reposition. And so you see a lot of incentives Q3 and Q4 of that year to help increase the total number of sales. Now, as we're seeing these rates come down, there's a few things that we've yet to see the full impact. But the first one is going to be how builders may reposition their incentives to still hit their sales numbers going into the election cycle, and on the backside of it, finishing out the year very strong because they don't want to hold a ton of inventory on their books into the new year because they want the cash. They want to be able to actually be liquid. And so as we see this coming down here, it's to be seen what the September and also October numbers will be, but I would expect it to be, I would expect it to definitely pick up, but I don't know if it's going to pick up as much as they hope. On the flip side, incentives may evaporate altogether because they're just able to move the houses because rates are coming down, people have that, and then we could even see incentives evaporate altogether and prices start hiking up very quickly. And so I wanted to show you also here, this is on the last 3 years. The median sales price specifically for new construction has come down somewhat, and this has been something some people have pointed to and seen as very alarming. But there's one piece of this that everybody's left out that you need to understand, and that is, while you see here that the median sales price has come down from about $430,000 down to just shy of $400,000, that is not reflected in the price per square foot. So homes, particularly new homes, are not getting cheaper. They're getting smaller. And so, especially if you're hoping to get a great deal on a new home, or maybe refinance and get a cheaper rate on an existing purchase, I would definitely recommend looking at making moves very soon because the mortgage and mortgage-backed securities markets have already priced in much of the anticipated rate cuts that we will see later today. And on the flip side, if the Federal Reserve decides to keep selling more of the assets on their balance sheet, we could actually see rates plummet very, very quickly later in this year. It's easier to refinance than it is to go back in time and get a cheaper sales price before a whole bunch of people started driving up the cost. So if you'd like my vendor list to talk with a professional mortgage broker, because again, I'm a realtor, not a mortgage broker. If you want to talk to a mortgage broker, any of the ones on my vendor list, give me a text mortgage to 980-449-3750. I'd be happy to send you my vendor list. And the big question you need to be asking, because everybody's asking the wrong question when it comes to rates, is with mortgage rates bouncing up and down, again, what do you do? The question that you ought to be asking is, when am I going to have the most leverage on a home purchase, not when a rate's going to come down, because you can refinance after you already got a good price, but if you buy it at a bad price, there's no undoing that. And the most leverage you're probably going to have for the next 4 years will be in the next 50 days prior to the election. So as long as there are these massive incentives out there, take advantage of them as much as you possibly can. If you want to work with an excellent realtor anywhere in North Carolina or South Carolina, my team and I cover all the Carolinas. We would love to work with you. We don't tell you what to do. We give you the tools and the information necessary and the guidance and advisement to make the right decision for you, because at the end of the day, I'm not paying your mortgage, so you're the one that has to be happy. And if you're not certain about moving to the Carolinas quite yet, go check out this video. It is the 5 regrets people have about moving to North Carolina after they move here.